Big Valboski here, and you are listening to Lazy Booking.
Everybody, I'm Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, and everybody's got a price for lazy booking. Hey, this is your living hero, Kurt Angle, and you're listening to Lazy Booking. Go, it's true. It's damn true. Ho! Hey, folks, I'm WWE Hall of Famer Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and if you want to know what's going on in wrestling, check out Lazy Bookings. Ho!
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a brand new edition of Lazy Booking right here on A2D Radio.com, brought to you by Gibson Mayer LLC, your certified public accountants, located at 301 Oxford Valley Road in Yardley, PA. Give them a call, 215-369-3300. Tax season will be back before you know it, so be ready, be prepared, and call Gibson Mayer.
What's up, fam? A2D Live niche night on a swap this week. With live reaction, Philadelphia Eagles and Packers coming on Thursday night. Tonight, you're getting Lazy Booking, and you're getting Hockey Happy Hour at 10 p.m. tonight with that crew. Special guest Rob Pove joining them, which is nice, from behind the glass.
The real Triple H.
The real Triple H. But listen, our topic of conversation, which we're going to get to after the fact, but we're going to mention it now, is brought to you by Dr. Vidal over at Specialized Physical Therapy. You can find them in Burlington, Cherry Hill, and Princeton, New Jersey. You can find them on the web, specializedphysicaltherapy.com. Dr. Vidal, he's our doctor. Make him yours. No appointment necessary. The topic of conversation will be, I forget already, guys. It was The Fiend, right?
The Fiend. You're so preoccupied by our surprise.
I am really
special guest.
Yes.
Well, to be fair, I think it would be distracting for anyone.
No, it's The Fiend has to win the title at WWE. Hell in a Cell, agree, disagree. But yeah, tonight, guys, we're happy to let you know we're going to have a special guest, a former multiple-time World Heavyweight Championship holder in WWE, WWF, WCW, and other organizations.
WCW?
Other organizations all around the country. One of the biggest names in the 1990s, Sid Vicious, Sycho Sid Eudy. He's going to be joining us.
Sid Justice, if you will.
Sid Justice. He's going to be joining us in about 10 minutes, guys. He's going to call into the studio. We're going to talk with him. We're going to try to get some of your questions out to him. We're going to talk about Sid, his upbringing. We're going to talk about his career, some of the highlights. He's a two-time WrestleMania main eventer with names such as Hulk Hogan and The Undertaker. You can even go back and talk about some of his most memorable moments. I know I'm going to ask him about that moment in Madison Square Garden at Survivor Series against Shawn Michaels.
Oh, yeah.
Whether you loved or hated Sid, he's a memorable guy. He's a big guy. He's a guy who was a very imposing force and almost in a lot of ways seemed like he was ahead of his time before heels were getting cheered before the baby faces. Oh, yeah. And that WrestleMania at Survivor Series at Madison Square Garden, and really WrestleMania 8 are two examples of that, with him getting cheers as the heel over Hogan and vice versa against Shawn Michaels as well, at a time where Shawn Michaels was red hot. He was white hot at that time.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you look back at his career and some of those really great moments, but I think one of the most masterful ones is he tried to stay in character when the Shockmaster showed up on television. So that's pretty impressive after that fiasco happened.
Listen, Davey Boy even struggled with that one.
I just want to know what happened when he destroyed the barber shop and all the product got into his eyes.
Okay.
Like, how bad did that hurt?
Oh, my God, the burn in the eyes. Yeah, listen, we're going to have a lot to talk about with Sid. We're really excited. When you think of Sid, what's the legacy that he leaves for you guys?
For me, it was kind of not coming out of nowhere, but being that guy that could be that big, intimidating heel. That, he was taller than most of the guys in WWE. So, when he went up against guys like Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, it's like he towered over them. So, I always thought it was really cool because he was actually he was athletic for a big man. So in a lot of ways, he was able to elevate the match in a really fun and kind of crazy David versus Goliath way, especially with Shawn Michaels in San Antonio in particular in the Rumble in '97, where I believe he was even fighting a cold and he was still wrestling Sid that night for the title.
Yeah. How about yourself, Mike?
I feel like he was a guy who I think could have been used so much more effectively than he was. But I feel like the promotions and the companies that he worked for could never really decide whether they wanted to use him as a babyface or a heel. And they flipped him at the most inopportune times. And I think as a result, they never got as much out of him as they could have.
Okay.
And in my mind, and I do want to ask him about this when we get him on the phone, I believe he's a Hall of Famer.
I agree.
I think it's an injustice, no pun intended, that he's not yet in the Hall of Fame, and I'd love to know what his thoughts are.
And that's actually John Danzo would like to know about the Hall of Fame as well. Has he been approached, and would he accept? So I think that's another great question. You know, for me, one of the strongest big man characters of the 90s, he's worked with everybody that's anybody. He's worked, you know, he was a Four Horsemen. He worked in the $1 Million Team. He worked with Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart and The Undertaker and Hulk Hogan in some of the biggest feuds of those early and mid 90s.
Well, he was a horseman at one point.
Yep, he was a horseman. I mean, there's just so much to this guy that he's done that I think flies under the radar sometimes with people too. Particularly, you know, you see a lot of the praise that Kevin Nash gets, and even back to the Diesel era. Well, who was the perfect foil for him kicking that character off? It was Shawn Michaels, but who was the guy to follow that? The big imposing guy who threatened, who really made people believe that he could be taken down. It was Sid Vicious.
All right, so, gentlemen, I will ask you, and Maddie, I'm going to look at you first because I have a feeling you have a strong opinion on this one. Better Powerbomb, Diesel or Sid?
You know, I actually, when I saw Sid's Powerbomb for the first time, I thought it was really devastating. With Nash, I kind of feel like he just kind of lets you go.
Yes,
you know, and you
agreed.
just kind of fall.
Whereas, you mean kind of like a jackknife tractor trailer that just falls?
Yeah. Whereas Sid's was kind of, he's literally like hurling you down to the mat. And even his choke slam, too. It's like he's hurling you down to the mat, you know? So I actually thought, man, Sid's Powerbomb looks a hell of a lot more devastating than Nash's, who's just kind of letting you fall and let gravity do the work for him.
Yeah, I mean, I would totally agree with that. And Maddie hit exactly why. When you looked at Sid's Powerbomb, it was devastating. There was follow-through to it. A lot of Kevin Nash's were basically just flipping a guy up and dropping him down. You really didn't have that kind of extra force to drive him down into the mat. And I felt like he hit it almost perfectly every time.
Absolutely.
Some of Nash's looked a little bit sloppy at times. You know, the one that I think of that was a little bit scary is the Brian Pillman in War Games. But, you know, when you have a cage that is literally up to your head,
right?
You know, it's not going to do you any favors. But overall, I mean, he's got one of the best, if not the greatest, powerbomb in the history of pro wrestling.
I don't think they were logistically thinking about, you know, somebody's 7 foot tall. Maybe we should make the cage just a little bit taller so somebody doesn't get hurt in that match.
Well, it's funny though because when they would bill Sid at 6'9", like he was a legitimate 6'9". I mean, you know, they would say that, you know, Nash was, you know, over 7 feet, and even Nash himself would say, you know, I was probably 6'10", but Sid was, you know, a legitimate 6'9", built like a Greek god, absolute badass. I mean, he was a college football player at one point, and you know,
even Tom says Sid was around back when I actually watched wrestling. So he's actually for once he's gonna know what we're talking about.
Hey,
I love it, Tom.
Kyle said the best bomb was the Batista bomb. It's a good one.
It's a good one. I mean, obviously he added that little drop down with it where he said it was a sit out power bomb.
I used to be a fan of the Pearl River Plunge.
Were you a fan of the Pearl River Plunge
from Odd Mid Johnson?
Yep.
And then I mean, Undertaker's last ride was pretty bad too because he would literally hoist you up and then throw you down, which is actually
lift up and
I
drop.
thought that was really cool.
Yeah, but I mean, When you talk about the guys that established the true Powerbomb, though, it was Sid Vicious.
Oh, yeah.
You know, in WCW, well before Kevin Nash.
Yeah, no, you're right. I'm just thinking he was also the subject of one of the best lines of all time on WWF television, courtesy of the Macho Man Randy Savage.
What was that?
Thank God for Sid Justice.
John also wants to know, what does he think about the current wrestling product? Does he watch? And also his thoughts on AEW versus WWE. We'll ask him. Again, I want you guys to, on YouTube, Periscope, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, get your questions in.
Yeah.
We're going to, obviously we're going to talk about Sid. And Sid also has his own project that he's kicking off. Well, he has kicked off. He's 4 episodes in, Vicious Circle. And that's on the EMC Podcast Network. And it's a lot of him. There's been a lot of stories that have been told about him over the years, and he's kind of debunking some stories and confirming other. It's on the Electronic Media Collective Podcast Network. So we're going to give him a chance to talk about his latest project and kind of what compelled him to get into this field. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have him on the phone about a minute or two.
Jason Cardamone just chimed in, and something that I thought of a couple days ago, and it then completely slipped my mind. He had a short ECW run.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. That's true.
Yeah. So we can even talk about that. We can ask him what it was like to work with Paulie. I think that was a name you mentioned earlier. Yep. We're going to have him on in about a minute. So it's going to be exciting, guys. It's a great show, and we're obviously after our time with Sid, we'll take our break at that point, and then we'll get in, and we'll talk a little bit of last night. We're not going to be watching SmackDown. This is all about Sid for us here.
Yeah, so no spoilers.
No spoilers, guys. And, and then, we'll talk a little bit about the high points from last night.
And it's going to be real interesting because I hope he does watch the product today, and I hope he's kind of keeping tabs on it because, it's always interesting to see the perspective of gentlemen and ladies who've been in the business prior to, WCW closing and everything like that, and getting their perspective on the modern day product and how it's evolved since the late 90s and the early 2000s.
Yeah, for sure. So we are going to get Sid on the phone here in about 20 seconds. But yeah, fam, remember, this is also your time. So we want you guys to interact. We want you to drop your comments in. We'll get to as many as we possibly can. We're going to have Sid Vicious, Sycho Sid, coming on momentarily.
After Mr. Softy goes by.
The anticipation.
I know.
If only we had, a nice orchestra in the background.
I know. All right, we got voicemail. We'll try him back in a minute.
Okay.
We did talk to him a few minutes ago, so we do know he's coming on.
I was going to say, we have
Slight
spoken to him in the last hour.
Oh, here he is. All right. Hi, Sid. How are you?
Did you just call?
I did. How are you?
Good. I thought it was 8 o'clock tonight. It's 7 o'clock my time right now.
Oh, no. My apologies. Is it a good time?
Well, I was just about to eat. Could we do it? Could I eat real quick and call you back?
You sure can. Give us a call back when you're ready, Sid.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. My bad. I forgot about the time difference.
And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Live Radio.
Live Radio. All right. Well, at least you guys have it confirmed Sid is going to be on the air.
You heard his voice. The master and ruler of the world.
Give a little.
This is Live Radio.
That's what we like to call the tease.
And that's cool. So what we can do then, we'll get into the second half of the show that we were going to do, and we'll bring him back. What do we got here? I'm messing. Who's ripping me already?
John.
Bro.
John.
Check that when you get a chance.
Tom, busting my chops.
I do have to tee one up for you here.
Yeah.
Should we call that a flub?
That was a flub. That was definitely a flub. That was a Marino flub.
That was a Marino flub.
All right, so let's get into the second half of the show then. So we'll get into
best of the week.
That's the best of the week. All right, guys. So let's get into Raw. Let's get into the poll question. this week on Raw, I loved the opening of the show. And guys, make sure you stick with us. It's going to be coming. You just heard him on the air.
Michael Klickoff, man-ass team.
That's true. That is true.
Oh, I'm dying. I am seriously dying right now.
All right, guys. So listen, let's get into it. This Raw opens up. Did you like the opening of Raw with the Fiend? Basically, they immediately went into the intro, then now forever.
Yo, somebody mute Arnone's comments because I'm cracking the hell up right now. My dude's just hungry.
So does the crumb of the week go to Chrome?
It does. I am the crumb of the week. I can't wait for Tom to rip me this week.
Dude, you landed us. You landed us a guest. You can't be the crumb of the week.
Tom said he's just opening an Italian hoagie.
All right, guys, back to Raw.
Okay, let's see if we can
get the rest of it in here.
I admittedly have not watched all of Raw yet, but from what I saw, I was a complete jackass because I watched the last 40 minutes.
Okay.
Because, that's basically the thread goes through to the last 40 minutes.
Sure.
And then I went back and I watched the first hour. So I have that middle hour and 20 minutes that I still have to get to.
Okay.
But the thing that I liked most about the entire show, and it's pretty innocuous, but you were saying at the very beginning with the then, now, and forever, that was more or less hijacked.
Yeah.
And you kind of knew right from there that was going to set the tone for the entire show. Thought that was badass.
I mean, I'm down with anything when it comes to, Bray Wyatt's Fiend. I really am. They seem to have a great idea of where they want to go with the direction of him and how they want to bring him in. And it's great. It just, again, it reminds me of when Kane first showed up. You never know when he's going to come, or you have an idea, and when you do, it's one of the best parts of the show. Well, back when Kane it was one of the best parts. This is the best part of the show for Raw.
Yeah. No, for sure. I loved the opening. It was something different, and that's the thing. I feel like this character is constantly generating something different that we haven't seen yet.
Oh, yeah.
I loved it, and obviously we open up and Bray's setting the tone. Kind of fast forward, and we had, a promo throughout the show where he talked about, things coming up with Hell in a Cell, and that kind of set the tone of what's going to happen later. So we'll get to that match after. Right. The 40 minutes you're talking about, well, let me ask this first. So this show, you didn't watch a lot of it. Right. Did you watch all of Raw?
Not all of it.
Okay. Ryan, did you watch all of Raw? Okay. All right. So
Silent
you
bro.
can tell that they're getting to they're tying up a lot of loose ends for a total draft or shakeup. Because there wasn't a whole ton of advancement on a lot of things, and they kind of have their hands in a lot of different bags. Obviously they're talking about how there's the beef between Sasha and Becky, but they're also keeping fresh the Alexa Bliss, Nikki Cross stuff.
Right.
And I think there's no accident by that because they're not sure what direction that things are going to go after Hell in a Cell. As far as the 5-way match for the number one contendership,
I like the fact though with that so you had your Intercontinental Champion and your United States Champion in a match for a number one contendership, which to me at least they're attempting to help bring some legitimacy and importance back to those two titles.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, it gives also it gives sort of a little bit of momentum towards Nakamura, U.S. champion. It's just telling you, it's okay, listen, even though your guys' championship runs, sometimes they get pushed to the back burner, we're going to put you right up front. You're going to be going for the big title, in a match. Even if you don't get it, at least you were there. And you could say you were there.
And what was interesting about it, too, and I'm sure you guys didn't catch this, was they did do a backstage segment. So they did have these little segments with the participants throughout, and they did a backstage segment in the locker room with Sami and Nakamura to where it almost seemed like they're now planting the seeds for the Nakamura-Sami Zayn feud, maybe a potential Nakamura face turn, to to where he seemed to be getting agitated with Sammy's kind of overexcitement
Right.
back in the locker room. So I think that's something to keep an eye on.
Well, and do we then draw back on the fact that Nakamura's first ever match under a WWE banner, so to speak, was Sami Zayn at TakeOver Dallas, and they did 30 minutes of absolutely incredible stuff.
I mean, I think that's going to be something definitely to keep an eye on and draw back on. We know what they can be in the ring, but again, at that time, they were letting Nakamura work a little more of a strong style. But absolutely, and again, that was a different feel.
Right.
You can create that different feel with a Nakamura face turn and Sammy working it as a heel.
Right.
I think it's going to be really intriguing for how they plan on going about this. If they do go to the route of making Nakamura a babyface again, which I would absolutely would love to see, because I think that was where he had the most momentum, was as a babyface. When they turned him heel, the heel turn really got off to a bad start because he was fed to AJ, and he just kept getting fed to AJ over and over and over again, and he lost a lot of steam because of it. And so I think turning him back to babyface will give the crowd the ability to once again get excited for his theme song, and he'll get a chance to just kind of do whatever he likes to do in his entrance, because that was half of the whole thing, was him doing the extravagant entrance.
I think some of the things that I'll take out of this match overall, I thought that all the participants looked really strong in this match. I thought Bobby Roode looked phenomenal in this match.
I was going to say the highlights that I watched, it looked like Bobby Roode was the MVP of the match.
Bobby Roode looked amazing in this match. Nakamura was highlighted a lot in this match. Ricochet early, but they had him pretty much go out pretty early. And I liked how they did the Ricochet elimination, where Nakamura just kind of snuck in the ring as he was getting ready to run off the ropes, and he hit him with the Kinshasa and rolled him up. And, man, you talk about a guy that can sell. He took that Kinshasa and the roll-up quite delightfully. But I thought it was a strong match.
Delightful.
Are we over AJ Styles at this point? Because I think the heel turn's not working for me right now.
I wouldn't necessarily say over him. I agree that it's maybe not working, but I think the reason that it's not working doesn't have anything to do with him. It's the club. You know, they had the club kind of, reunite with AJ, become badasses, win the tag team championships, and then basically almost start acting like the goofball guys again. Like, they should have just kept all three of them as badasses, and I think it would be fine.
Yeah, what didn't help anything, too, is when they originally had them and all that hype was surrounding them, they just absolutely just stumbled right out of the gate in the booking side of things for the club. AJ was booked perfectly fine.
I'm going to cut you there. We got Sid calling in. All right. This is not a drill, guys. Hey, Sid, how are you?
Good, yourself?
Good. My apologies for that. I completely forgot about the time difference.
That's okay.
All right. So we want to welcome you, Sid, to Lazy Booking on A2D Radio.com. We appreciate your time today.
Appreciate you guys having me on today.
Of course, of course. Sid has a new project that he's already began. He's rolled out 4 episodes of Vicious Circle. And Sid, we want to just kind of first and foremost ask you, what made you want to kind of get into the podcast game and start talking about your stories?
Well, I've been approached by several people and say, Sid, you ought to try to do a podcast. And honestly, I didn't know anything about podcasts. I'd heard about them. I'm not really, just in the last, say, really the last year and maybe more intensely the last 6 months, where I've gotten into, getting online and looking things up. One of the things is, real quick, I always was against stuff like that because what I related podcast or internet and stuff like that was to gossip and rumors. Because when the internet first came, got, when it first got popular, it really was for wrestling. It was just like a dirt sheet. And I don't know if you guys even know what a dirt sheet is.
Oh, we definitely do.
Well, are they still out there?
Online, yeah.
Yeah, they are.
Well, I'm sure they're online now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is the thing is,
this is how I was introduced. And, when you learn something and it turns out to be pretty much true, you usually stick with it. And I'll never forget, I was Lord Humongous down in Continental.
Mm-hmm.
And the booker, his name was Robert Fuller. And he said to me, "Sid, have you ever heard of a dirt sheet?" And I don't know if I had or not. I think I'd heard a little bit through, my manager, Bruno, always had them. I said, "No, I've never read one, but I've heard of them." He said, "Well, listen." He said, "Don't ever read one." He said, they're written by people that aren't in the business, and they give opinions on things that they know nothing about. And right now they're talking really bad about you, saying, you're the worst Lord Humongous of all time and stuff like that. Well, I said, you know what? And he said that, wrestling magazines and stuff like that. And so I said, this guy's been in the business a long time, so I'll listen to him. Mm-hmm. And he said this to me too. A lot of people said this, and I'm sure they said to a lot of people. But he said, "Sid, you're going to be something one day in this business, and you don't have to worry about what people say about you." And I think that part did come out true. Mm-hmm. So, all right. So when the internet stuff came out, I looked at it as the same. I never looked at wrestling magazines. And the two guys, I think everybody knows this, I wasn't a wrestling fan. Growing up, I never watched wrestling, stuff like this. This was a business to me. And the way I really looked at it was magazines and dirt sheets, if that's what you want to call them, mm-hmm. and stuff like that was not anything I was interested in, because it's not going to benefit me in my pocketbook. I'm not going to worry about what someone says about me.
Absolutely right.
And saying this to guys, not knowing about it until I just started going to church last year. I hate gossip. I hate when people gossip. And so it just wasn't anything that I was interested in. And what I found, the first things I knew about the internet were, it was the same thing. It was just, another one person's opinion that, right or wrong is, and you're not going to be able to change people's opinion. So about a year or so ago, I got my first flat screen phone, and I got a tablet. And the reason being is me and a buddy of mine are writing a book, and a couple of us are, I've got help from a couple other people. Mm-hmm. Well, this guy, a friend of mine, taught me how to get online and look at all these things, and I'll tell you, this is a true story. So I got online, learned how to FaceTime. So the guy was, I had a tablet and a flat screen phone, and I bought a laptop for a guy that was Sycho Sid Promotions, where he could help me correct some of the stuff in the book that one of these guys was helping us write. So I was making the corrections,
Yeah.
And so one night he's walking me through, showing me how to get online. And so, and this was just dumb luck or coincidence, whatever. So the very first thing I pulled up was an interview with Kevin Nash, and it said, and I later found out what the topic was. They were, I guess, giving their opinion about the Arn Anderson incident, right? Mm-hmm. And so he goes, "Yeah, I always knew Sid was a little off or something like that, Mm-hmm. Now, my memory of Kevin is pretty simple. Is that I was with him when he first started WCW. He rode with me, and we rode together. And, we got some, worked out together and hung out together. We're good friends, and we were in WWF together. We were good friends, and never did he ever, say something like that to me to my face, or, so that's what I remember what really happened as far as when we were around each other. So I barked back and said something in the fact that, Kevin, that's big talk for someone who, when they were the champ and being on top, that, that guys weren't getting paid. I don't know if you guys are aware of that or not.
Yeah, no, we are.
You do, that there was a time that we weren't getting paid for months. You know what I mean?
Oh, wow. Didn't know it was that long.
Yeah. No.
This is what they did, guys. This is how it happens. That it was so bad there that, I didn't have to do this because I was lucky. I had made money and I didn't have to borrow money. But this is what a lot of guys did. And I've seen people like Bob Holly and Billy and Bart Gunn. I rode with these guys. and Carl Willett and people like that. What they had to do was they would take a draw, whatever the maximum draw was, say if it was $200 or $300, you know, they would take that draw, they'd go home and take that money and put it in their account where it would cover their credit card and their, house payments and everything that they're trying to pay, like wherever you got, especially on the road, you got, pay your room, hotels and food and stuff. So I'm telling you, man, they were starving on the road, some guys. So I barked back and said something like that. I said, that's big talk for someone, really only time being on, his first time on top. And the only thing you really can say for yourself that, when you're on top, guys weren't getting paid. And guys, when I was on top, guys were getting paid the best they ever got paid. And that's how that worked. When I was in the business, when we were on a pay scale like that in WWE or WWF, when I was on top of Sidjustice, everybody got paid really well. There wasn't that ever going on. But when Kevin was on top, that would include Bret Hart and other people, the people he worked with. And, it wasn't say Kevin's fault altogether, but it was just, he was responsible for that because that's what it was. So my publicist named Barry Norman, he found out I did that. And he called me the next day. He said, Sid, did you get online and argue with Kevin Nash? And I said, yeah, I did. He said, well, I want you to get rid of that phone and get rid of that tablet. He said, because he said this, he goes, when you argue back with someone, all you do is you're extending the argument. And no matter what you say, even if you say something like that, which is true or not true, Kevin's fans are going to believe Kevin, and whatever Kevin says about you, his fans are going to believe it, and your fans are going to believe it's not true. So it really doesn't do you any good to, do a rebuttal or comment about about a comment somebody else has made.
Right.
So I did. I got rid of my phone. I got rid of the tablet. Well, I just got a new one because I got Barry Norman who now helped me with the book. He's helped me, and I got the new phone just really for be able to keep it with pictures of my grandson and stuff like that. But I've also got it where I got me a laptop. Now I'm doing my own podcast, and it's called Vicious Circle. So and then I'm learning too. I won't do that anymore. That do me good to rebuttal or make conflicts with people who are saying things that aren't true. I'm saying they're not true because no matter what I say, people are going to believe what they want to believe. So I'm not going to, so that's the reason I didn't get into, online and internet stuff. Now I am, and I can do things and where it can be a benefit for me, meaning where I can promote my book. I can, really, that's when I really truly got into it first was for a vehicle to promote my book. And then I also found, since I've gotten into it, I found out, a lot more benefits where, not that it'll matter, but I like to hope that with my podcast, that I'll be able to do things to give people some knowledge. And I'm going to try to be as honest as I can always be, to where at least I like to think that would be a different podcast out there, that only the truth or as much as the truth as I can remember. And if I can't tell you the truth, I'm going to tell you I can't tell you the truth,
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you a story just to have a story.
Yeah.
And so there were a bunch of reasons, but the main reason really was just to promote the book I'm writing. And then after looking into it, I found out there's a lot of other cool things about it, so and then I've been doing a lot of podcasts to promote the Vicious Circle, and it's fun. It gets me back into the business a little bit. And I'm going to just, Rob Bellamy, who's my producer, helps me do this. He's driven down from Canada on 2 occasions, and we spent 2 weekends here, taping some of these podcasts, and it's a lot of fun. And I think it gives me insight to some of the things that are going on in the business. Like some of the things people aren't able to keep in contact with out here, what they're doing and how they're doing. To me, that's a positive thing about it.
Yeah, and if you're just joining us, we have Sycho Sid Vicious, one of the greatest of the 1990s, one of the most memorable professional wrestlers of the 1990s, joining us here on A2D Radio.
The
on
master
Lazy
and ruler of the world,
Absolutely.
if you will.
And in our opinion, Sid, you know, we were doing a little bit of a reflection before you came on. And in our opinion, I think a lot of us here, the greatest Powerbomb of all time, the Powerbomb that put it on the map.
Well, I think it was one of the first used in the United States. I do know it was used in Japan. A guy named David, his wrestling name was Motley's from this area here in Memphis. I was going down Continental to do the Loyalty Monks character, and he said, man, you got to try this finish called the Powerbomb, and he showed it to me. And when I thought of a finish, I wanted to think of a finish that looked like the Powerbomb, but it was something I could do to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Powerbomb isn't something I could do to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going to try it, though. So when I got down to Continental, they said, what finish you're going to use? And I told them, and they preferred me to use what the other Loyalty Monks was using, and that was the Cobra Clutch, or the Shinda Shimaki. It was like a version of the Slick Roll. So I did what they asked, but I sort of amped it up a little bit when I had them in that position. I'd always lift them off their feet a little bit and then like throw them down on the mat in the back, almost like a sidewalk slam or something, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what had happened was Eddie Gilbert came in as the new booker, and he didn't know what finish I was using. And so my first television taping under Eddie being the new booker, I used the Powerbomb. And I'll never forget it. It was in the Botwell Auditorium in Birmingham. And I remember someone at the front row saying, that guy's dead. And I said, man, I need to use that finish. And that's a true story. And I started using it after that.
Sid, what got you there's been a few stories that we've heard as far as your introduction into professional wrestling. So maybe you can help us set the record straight as far as which is the correct story. What exactly was it who was it that got you into professional wrestling?
Well, what it was is Memphis had a football league come through called the USFL. You know, the name called the Memphis Showboats.
Memphis Showboats.
Yep. Yeah, and they had open tryout at a football facility there in Memphis. I can't remember the name of it now. Mm-hmm. And so I think like 10,000 people showed up. So I made it till the last cut, and that was got to practice with the team and all that. And I hadn't played football since high school. Well, what I was going to do was I was going to go back to school and maybe try a small college and go a couple years of college and maybe walk on, because the thing about football really, and I had all the talent, what they look for is a 40, is funny guys, a vertical jump, a broad jump, and those are really the three things in your agility drills. They'll judge you on your bench press, how many times you do 225. I think I did it for 33 reps, and that was a new NFL record. And this was a USFL, so I stood out on all the basic drills, and so that's why I was able to make it to the last cut. Mm-hmm. And so I figured I could probably make it in football. So I was working out, and at the same time I was working out at the gym with Randy Savage and Hillbilly Jim and Tracy Smothers and all the guys from Memphis were working at a gym called French Riviera Spa. And I was at a Fridays, TGI Fridays one time, and the guy, I don't remember the guy's name, he said it was a promoter, and he promoted a country music singer named Eddie Bond. And Eddie Bond had his own little station, his own little show in Memphis. It was called the Eddie Bond Show. And he said, man, if you ever thought about wrestling, I know a guy to get you in and I could be your manager. Well, I made him over to Mid-South Coliseum one night. We went in and talked to a guy named Mr. Coffee. His name's really Guy Coffee. And he said, yeah, we'll get you introduced. He said, but you got to go through a wrestling school, this and that, and sort of toes the ropes. And we left, and the guy got back with me. Well, the next day I was in the gym. I saw Randy Savage and Hillbilly Jim and Tracy Smothers, and they all came up to me and said, hey, man, what do you think about wrestling? I said, well, I'm thinking about wrestling, but I'm still thinking about football. I think I could probably, get to, walk on. I already had an offer on a walk-in scholarship. And they said, well, man, you could be wrestling in a short period of time. You could probably, make about the same amount of money. At that time, I think an offensive line was making about $50,000 a year, and it felt that, that's about what they were making. And then they said you could probably make about the same thing in wrestling, but you could do it a lot quicker. And of course, I had a wife that was pregnant, and I thought, man, okay, I need to think about this. And they said, also, by the way, this guy that took you to the Coliseum, you don't need him. In wrestling, it isn't like that. Managers are not real managers. You know, they don't really get you jobs, meaning that they're just part of the gig. They weren't trying to smart me up, but they were letting me know this guy was trying to, you know, rip me off. So they introduced me to Tojo Yamamoto, who, you know, trained me, and he was part of the Memphis, you know, he was a fixture in the Memphis territory forever. You know, he was really one of the famous legends here. So that's what I did. I got going to Tojo Yamamoto school, and next thing you know, I was in wrestling.
Do you remember your debut match?
I sort of had a couple, guys. It was weird. I remember my first match, or my first introduction was, I was sitting at home one night, and this is they hadn't smartened me up yet. You know, I've been going to wrestling school now for 6 or 7 months or something. And I got a phone call from Tojo saying, hey, you want to come to the Coliseum and do something tonight? And I said, sure, you know. And he said, well, come over, we'll tell you what it is. So I got over there, and I got to the back door, to the door where they walk into the dressing room, and he said, stay right here. He said, okay, what we got tonight is the Fabulous Ones are in a match, and they're going against the Sheep Herders, and Jonathan Boyd is in their corner. And your job tonight is be in the Fabulous Ones' corner. And if Jonathan Boyd's get up out of his seat, your job is to put him back in his seat. Now, the thing is, I don't know if you guys know who Jonathan Boyd is. Do you?
The name is familiar, but that's a long time ago, Sid.
Okay, well, that's okay. But let me tell you something. He was one of the scariest people you ever seen in your life. Mm-hmm. And he was one of the original Sheep Herders.
Okay.
You remember the Sheep Herders? Remember?
Absolutely. Luke and
the
Butch.
Bushwhackers? Yep. Those guys weren't baby faces. Before they went to the WWF, they were heels.
Right.
And they bled every night, and they were brutal, and they were weird acting, screaming, and they, and that was their gimmick. Because when you're not smart to the business, and no one's telling you this is a work, and they're telling you your job is to fight this crazy guy and put him back in his seat, I was scared to death, So when they would tell me that, I'd look at them and myself. I'm saying to myself, I'm going, okay, tell me the rest. That this business is fake, and this is all going to be okay. And they go, you got it? I go, yeah. So they let me sit out there all night long. Never brought me in the dressing room. And once or twice through the night, they'd come out and go, okay, you remember what you're doing? I was like, yeah. You said, well, okay, what you do is you sit in the corner. And if John Boy gets out of his chair, you put him back in his chair. I'm like, okay. And I'm guessing before we get out there, they're going to tell me what's going on, right? And they never did. So what happened was, I remember, like it was yesterday, I remember looking across there scared to death, And I remember him getting up and the people reacting. Like, oh, my God. And when he got up, I was going to go over and do what I had to do. And when I got up, he sat back down. And I went, hold on a minute. So then the match went on. I don't even remember the match. I was so busy, scared to death. I was going to have to fight this guy with scars all over his forehead. And he'd raise back up. I'd get up and he'd sit back down. Well, now I'm thinking maybe this guy's scared of me. I'm a lot bigger than he is. On TV too, he looks a lot bigger, right? So I'm thinking maybe he's scared of me. But that was my first introduction to the business, was that match right there.
Wow.
And I never got smartened up.
So, true or false, one of your earliest actual matches was a tag match where you teamed with Austin Idol against Jerry the King Lawler and Nick Bockwinkel, who were two former world champions.
Right. I'd done a match under a mask as the Nighthawk one night at the Coliseum.
Okay.
And then I did, they called me when WWF came to town one time, the first time the Coliseum, Lawler and them ran a free show at the Redbird Stadium, and they called me Cody Starbuck. That was my second match.
Okay.
And then my third match was that one. I was Lord Humongous with Austin Idol and against Nick Bockwinkel and Jerry Lawler.
So that was your third match. That's incredible.
Wow.
Well, that is, to me, it's really cool thing. That's a pretty good for this area, that's as good as it gets. Lawler's, top guy in the business. Austin Adams, top guy. And Nick Bockwinkel's one of the top guys in the country, So now I think what happened there, I never was really told. I think what happened was they had somebody planned for that, and they didn't show up or something. Now, I was told it was Terry Funk.
Okay.
And so what they had that match already booked around what they did here in Memphis, they do Saturday TV, then Monday night would come off from the Coliseum, would come off live from Saturday TV, and then they would take that TV taping and show it in Louisville and Evansville the following week. So you take the Monday night Mid-South Coliseum match and do that not Tuesday night, but the following Tuesday in Louisville, then the following Wednesday in Evansville, and then whatever the spot shows were after that. So I got like a 3-4 week run off of that deal. And then my first real run was, Lord Humongous down in Continental. It was my first full-time gig.
So we're going to ask a couple random moments, Sid. First one I have, true or false, you came up with the name of the Harlem Heat.
Right, true.
Can you tell us that story?
Well, what it was is I wanted to call them the Posse. Mm-hmm. And what happened was I wish I stuck with it. The reason I didn't was because I swear on my life to this, I came with the name Posse because I just thought it was cool. And we were portraying these guys as being two guys off death row, real rough crew.
Yeah.
And, I just thought the name Posse sounded cool. But a movie came out when I met them and got them, to sign the deal and everything. Before we got them on the first set of TVs, a movie came out. And it was a movie about a black Western, and it was called The Posse. Mm-hmm. And I felt like maybe people would thought I was copying something else, and I didn't want to do that. So, and then Dusty came in, and Dusty wanted to call them the Chi-Town Heat. Now, to me, that was just a sort of a runoff of what the Road Warriors, because they considered themselves from Chicago, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Right.
And I remember that name Chi-Town, that phrase come up. These guys had already billed themselves from Harlem, when they were in Global and down in the Texas territory. So I said it makes more sense to call them the Harlem Heat. I really wanted to call them. Well, I wasn't going to change my mind not to go to the Posse. I really was going to call them the Harlem Hellraisers.
Okay.
Huh. And so then when me and Dusty, not arguing, but, got into a dispute about what to call them, I just conceded to Harlem Heat.
Okay.
Now, for everyone that's just joining us once again, you're watching Lazy Booking on A2D Radio. We have Sid Vicious on the line with us. And Sid, thank you for joining us. Matty, go ahead, buddy.
Sid, you were in 2 main events at WrestleMania. You had WrestleMania 8 and you had WrestleMania 13. And I just remember seeing the matchup between you and The Undertaker. Never really got a chance to see too much of you and Hogan, obviously. But which one did you look back on the most fondly? That was man, that was a really great moment right there working with that guy.
Well, to be honest with you guys, I've told the story. I knew WrestleMania 8 was WrestleMania, but I didn't really. I remember it was like a year later. Someone asked me the question, "What was it? What did it feel like being in WrestleMania?" I said, "I didn't remember being in WrestleMania." And then they reminded me what the match was, and I said, "Oh yeah, I remember that match." And guys, this is the truth again. I wasn't a wrestling fan. And I never looked at a booking sheet because I did things that I wasn't going to drive myself crazy. I wasn't going to worry about who I was working with. And I got advice from people like, let's say, Hillbilly Jim. He told me, he said, "Man, don't ever worry about winning and losing. This shit's fake. You'll keep your job if you'll do business." And that's all I cared about was making money and just doing what I was told for the most part and trying to get from day to day. That's the way I looked at it. So I don't really look at either WrestleMania being any different from any other shows I did.
Okay.
Now, I do remember WrestleMania 8 for one reason. Like I do the Alamo Dome with Sean.
Mm-hmm.
It was, that meaning it was 70,000+ people.
Yeah.
And you don't forget that,
No.
So that was the cool thing, And that, what made WrestleMania 8 a little cool for me is it sounds so stupid, maybe to some people. But I'll never forget it. My boss, when I was Continental, his name was David Woods. He owned, his dad and him owned like 20 television stations across the country, real wealthy people. His dad run for governor a bunch of times. Well, I was at the lobby. I was in the hotel lobby at wherever hotel we stayed at Indianapolis for WrestleMania, and I looked behind me. And it was David Woods, the owner of Old Continental Territory. I said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "I'm here to watch you at WrestleMania." I was like, "You gotta be kidding me!" He said, "So this guy comes to watch, his own employee at WrestleMania,
That's great.
Speaking.
Now, to me, that was probably the coolest thing about the whole thing.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's amazing. And you know what? You brought up Sean, and I actually want to tie that into WrestleMania 8 and go back to your matchup with Sean at Survivor Series. It's almost like you were ahead of your time in a sense of one of the first guys who would be a quote-unquote heel who was cooler than the red-hot babyface. And when you talk about WrestleMania 8 and that program with Hogan, and then you flash forward to your program working with Sean, these were guys who were considered at the top of the business and starting to get booed. And I especially with Survivor Series, I can remember you walking out to an incredible pop. So can you kind of talk about that to kind of what was before? Nowadays everybody loves the heels and boos a lot of the baby faces, but you were kind of one of the pioneers of that in the 90s.
All right, and I'm not going to say, all right, I don't like, sometimes it sounds like I'm bragging on myself. I'm not trying to at this moment, but I'll say
You could
this
tell
right.
us how cool you were. Come
Yeah,
on, Sid.
listen, we all believe it.
Well, this is what happened, guys, that when you say wannabe or something like that, really, I was the first person, say, for instance, to work with a baby face like an Undertaker one night and be the heel, and then the next night work with a heel like Vader and be the baby face.
It's true.
Or I could work with, I was the first one really, and then two, I was the first heel to really get cheered a lot, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
So now, I don't know what caused that other than the things I thought would get you over in the business. And that's, there's a lot of things, guys. You have to, I think you have to have a good interview. You have to have the body. You have to have the look. You have to be able to work. You have to have people to believe what you're doing is real. And there's a lot more stuff than that. So I figured if I put all those things together, that it would work. And so, and I think it also had a lot to do with the timing of the business where, Hogan was doing that vitamins and say your prayer stuff,
Mm-hmm.
And that was, when I look on that, I look back on that right there, that was really old school.
Mm-hmm.
That was, the matches were like truly working with one of the Three Stooges. What was he actually had the same matches Curly of the Three Stooges were. His comeback was pretty simple. It was the same match every night. Just all right, I'll get heat on me. I'll start walking around the ring. You punch me, I won't sell. You punch me, I'll slap my face a couple times. I'll block a punch, give you a punch. Block a punch, give you a punch, and that was his comeback. Well,
That's right.
to me, guys, when you do that, and you get sit in a groove like that, you handcuff yourself, and then you shorten your run. You got to be flexible. And I think I really don't know how the answer you're looking for, but I think I remember, for instance, in WCW before I went to WWF, like in the Northeast, and I think that's where it happened for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
The Northeast wrestling fan isn't a fan that you can say program. You can't say, okay, we want you to like this person, we want you to dislike this person. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, that's us. We're the Northeast Wrestling
we're,
fans. So
we're just outside of Philadelphia,
yes.
so we know exactly what you're talking about.
We've all grown up. Actually, we're all very different generations, from anywhere between 20 years old to a little bit older, and we all have all those generations experienced the Northeast Wrestling fan, and that's one thing that has never changed in this area. So you're spot on with that.
Yeah, and sitting around this table, Sid, we have memories of you from Continental, NWA, WWF, and even ECW. So we cover it all with you, big guy.
Well, this is what I'm getting to. I always said, and I've told people this 1,000 times, the Northeast Wrestling fan is, to me, the best wrestling fan in the country,
We love
the
it.
world. And I really consider Madison Square Garden like really my hometown because I was over like $1 million.
Yeah, we know that.
and Northeast, say for instance, I remember like my first days in wrestling, WCW, which WCW wasn't really that strong in the Northeast, but we went there some. And I remember like everybody hated working with me up there because babyfaces hate to get booed. And when you worked with me up there, you were going to get booed. So the Northeast Wrestling fans sort of forced the promoters' hands to, use me right. They're like, this guy's over, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like I could walk in the dressing room. And of course, I just said earlier, I never looked at the booking sheet, but I could point to you who I was working with that night because that guy looked depressed.
Now,
I'm not kidding. I'll never forget Brian Pillman one night. He was one of, like everybody doesn't like get booed. He told Magnus, he says, I don't feel good. I don't want to take that Powerbomb tonight. Magnus said, no, you're taking that Powerbomb. It was just him not trying to get out of being depressed,
Now I would assume because of the Northeast fan being a big fan of you, that's probably what led to Vince giving you the WWF Championship in '97 and in '96.
I think that had a lot to do with it, guys. I'll tell you the story on that. Of course, it's going to be my book. We talk a little bit about it on the Vicious Circle. Thing is this, the fan really did force Vince's hand to that, guys. What had happened was at Survivor Series, now a month or so before that, we were, I think 2 months before that, I was working the loop, and on that loop there, I was working with Vader. And we're at Madison Square Garden. They came to me and said, we need you to put Vader over tonight because next time we're here, it's going to be Survivor Series, and he's going to beat Shawn for the title. And I said, sure, whatever. So it's a true story. Me and Vader, and I feel like, and people tell the truth and say this too, that we had the best match on the card every night. As far as people's response, they were really into it.
Well, you guys were two of the more underrated big men in the sport, too, so I could totally see that.
Well, I don't think we were ever underrated. When you talk about big guys, you always hear Vader's name, and my name is always up there. So I don't think either one of us are underrated. I don't think that's true.
Okay.
But no, but Vader was a hell of a worker, and he made you look like $1 million. So we had a hell of a match every night, and we were killing it. And we really, truly, and this was back in the day was, it's sort of like was a cornball saying, like when people would try to do all these, Frankensteiners and suplexes, stuff like that. If you could go over and do a match with a wrist lock and make it more entertaining than, say one of these matches they have now that has 92 high spots, that's harder to do, guys, than doing the other way. Well, that's what me and Vader did. We did a top wrist lock and went into a test of strength deal, and I ended up putting him over. He caught me off the top rope with a moon. He caught me with a crossbody, planted me, and did a moonsault. Well, the match was so over. When we came through the curtains, I saw Vince's face, and I knew right there at that moment that he had changed his mind and was going to make me the world champion in that match. It was going to put me in that match and make me the world champion because this is too. There went from guys not getting paid, guys, to now they're selling out everywhere they go.
Yeah.
When I came back from my injury, and the only difference was me. I was the only difference in the equation. So I'm going to take credit for that because I think it's easy to say if they're not getting paid and I take a year off and I come back from an injury, and within a couple months me be back, now they're selling out every night, and the only change is me coming back. That would say Sid had a lot to do with that, I would say.
Okay.
So now we're selling out. I know this is happening. So after the match, we're at the Gardens. I go, and I think it's Bob Holly, I tell, and Ron and Don Harris and a couple other guys. I said, you wait, when we go to In Your House at Indianapolis, they're going to come to me and they're going to change the finish. Instead of me putting Vader over at Indianapolis, he's going to put me over, and I'm going to win this title on Survivor Series. Was In Your House at Indianapolis, when Vince pulled me into his office, which was just a locker room, he said, hey, we've decided to change the finish and we're going to put you over tonight. And I told Vince, I told a couple guys last month, I said, I told them that this was going to happen.
Wow.
So I called that. And the reason they changed that, guys, is because I made that much of a difference, okay? And that's not bragging on myself or putting myself over. That's facts, and that's what was happening at the time, and that's what – and then two guys, when I came back at Sycho Sid, they put me on that whipping post because I had left, Vince. And I think they put the blame on me that the business got so bad. But it wasn't me. I wasn't there when I was there, the business was good. When I came back is when it was bad.
Yeah.
So to me, that was probably the most gratifying moment of my career where, one, I was on the whipping post and I worked myself off of it where they were just destroying me, had me work with idiots all the time, not putting me in a good spot. And what I did, and the Northeast Wrestling fan sort of helped me do that. When you're starting to draw money and you change things that dramatically, they have to use you in the right way.
Yeah.
So we did what's called a Napa convention, and that's where, like, all the buildings will bring, like, their new stuff. If they have a new hot dog cooker or a new display or, new seats or all kind of stuff. And they have them once a year, and they're a big thing that, all companies do. And WCW, which, is owned by Ted Turner, they had downstairs this big layout, and it was all the NWO, and it was like first class, dude.
Mm-hmm.
And Vince's little deal was upstairs in a little bitty area in a corner of a room by itself with nothing. You couldn't even see it. And that's how far down their territory had gotten,
Wow.
where they were getting beat that bad.
Yeah.
Now, the thing about it, though, where they were beating us in the ratings and stuff, but we're beating them and drawing money. I mean, we're probably beating them in the house shows 100-1, as far as selling tickets.
Yeah.
So we go to the Napa convention, and the deal was, I was going to put Sean over at the Alamo Dome, and the reason that was sort of favored of Sean, or Sean's dream, to have a pay-per-view in his hometown of that magnitude, him being on top, and I guess being the world champ. And I said, Vince, well, things are going pretty good right now. You still plan on, you're still going to what are you going to do with the belt? He said, well, what we're going to do, we're going to put the belt on Sean at the show, but then he's going to put it back on you the following night at Monday Night Raw.
Okay.
And then Sean retired after that night.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, Sid, we have a ton of our viewers and listeners. I mean, no less than a dozen of them right now, just all chiming in at the same time, wanting to know your opinion on the Hall of Fame, how you feel about it, if you've ever been approached about it, and frankly, why we haven't seen you in the Hall of Fame just yet.
I don't know. It could be, Vince is one of these guys who really hold grudges. I don't know if that's the case. I think he always had a dislike for me that time I walked out on him, but it wasn't like that, guys. I won't go into it, but I walked away from a guaranteed deal of $750,000, and that was a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
That was the highest paid contract of all contracts, and I went to work for Vince for a contract saying he only assured me one night for $250. I left that for a handshake, and I won't go into it right now, but everything he said that I was going to be able to do, nothing came to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing came around like he said. Everything, from the moment I had to take the Warriors' place because they had to fire him, it just all went the wrong way. And then after, it just kept going on and kept going on, and then at the where it was the Royal Rumble where Hogan got booed, and then we got back in the back, and Hogan started screaming at Vince about, you planned this and stuff like that. It wasn't that. It was just time for that to happen. It it wasn't that I was that much better than Hogan. It was just people have run, and it's over sometime. And he had his run, and then we were in Albany, New York, and that's the Northeast, and they were booing him at that point.
Do you remember who planned that finish with him pulling you out of the ring instead of Flair throwing you out?
I guess it was Vince.
Okay.
Yeah, that was that's a memorable moment too.
Yeah,
When
absolutely.
you were getting cheered for sure.
Well, they dubbed that out. They tried to make it sound where the people couldn't hear that, but to me too, guys, that's where I gave my notice that night. I said, "Hey, look, Vince, man, I want to shake your hand. I want to tell you I appreciate what you've done for me, which wasn't anything. He didn't do what we agreed on." I said, I can't stay here any longer. I said, I can't work in an environment where, grown men cry like that. I'm not gonna have someone scream down the hall that I'm planning or you're planning to make these people boo people, and that's going to happen with anybody that works with me. And if people are going to act like that, and what it is, guys, it just wasn't a controlled environment. Mm-hmm. And really, the large part of it was I just wasn't ready for that yet.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know if anybody's really ready for that, but I just wasn't ready for that. And I wasn't having fun at that point. So I think that him having that grudge toward me, and he wouldn't have put that belt on me or gave me that run that I had. Only reason he did that because they needed to.
Yeah. Sid, you had the opportunity to come back to work Raw 1000, work a program with Heath Slater where they were bringing the legends back. What was that like for you? Was that kind of a way to come back and get, as far as on WWE standards or WWF standards, a chance to come back and kind of have that last little moment there?
It was for me. I'll tell you what it was, and I did an interview, and I think maybe Vince Mad too, was, this is the thing is, after I broke my leg and I got back, as good as I could get, I had my lawyer call them and see if we can work a deal about me coming back. So I wanted to finish my career. Right before I broke my leg, I had actually talked to Kurt Hennig about it. I said, "Man, what do you want to do in the business?" He said, "I'm ready to just be an agent." And I said, "I'm ready to get out of business. I want to have one last run, but I want to do something really cool." Mm-hmm. And I know what the business is, and I want to give back everything that I've been given. Meaning, I want to do an angle so good that when I'm done, they can say that no one ever went out like that. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to do that, you have to really give everything you got and know this is it for you, and just go out the best a person can go out. And I had a couple ideas, and I was going to present it to WCW, who I was working with at the time. And then I was actually going to maybe shoot it to Vince too one last time. And then when I broke my leg, I wasn't able to do that. So when I got back from my leg break, it was about as good as I think I could. I attempted to my contact to my lawyer. Now, I've always been honest. I know I'm sometimes hard to deal with, and it didn't take very long a conversation. I could get someone mad at me because I'm probably going to say the wrong thing. So what I was trying to do is use a lawyer to get around that. I wasn't trying to use a lawyer to be a smart ass or anything. I just didn't want to start off the first conversation on the wrong foot.
Yeah.
And they told my lawyer they weren't talk to him. They'd only talk to me. And I said, if they won't talk to you, then I'm not willing to talk to them. Because that was a red flag to me. And here it is. I'm willing to come in and give my last drop of blood, and you're going to give me this kind of, this kind of wall, put this wall in front of me saying, I'm already, I know the business, but I'm not coming in to get over. I'm already over. I'm coming in to get somebody over for you and maybe do it better than anybody else has ever done it.
Yeah.
So,
God, I'm sorry, Sid. God.
But again, I just had an empty feeling about that, and for me, going back for that deal with Heath Slater, that was a victory for me. And I said that in an interview there. I said, I won tonight. I said, you guys called me. I didn't call you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No,
and that's the way I really feel about that.
No, and that was a great moment for a lot of us, particularly who grew up. A lot of my prime wrestling when I got into it was 89, 90, and I watched a lot of the bulk of your career as far as WCW and WWE, WWF goes. You did reference when you broke your leg, and we all know that was obviously a very tough moment for any of us to obviously watch, and a lot of us were really rooting for you as far as coming back. Can you just give us some quick insight, just kind of on the moment when that happened?
Insight on what now?
Give us just some of your insight on like maybe kind of what was going through your head the moment when you jumped off the rope and you had the leg break.
Well, I don't think you really think about things like that when you're doing something like that. You jump off. I realized my leg was broken, from the incident, from the second it happened. And you don't, for me, I never looked at it like this is going to be the end of my career. I hate bringing this up, but I remember the story about Kerry wrestling without part of his leg. So I knew that I had a broken leg. It was bad, but it wasn't the end of my life. So I knew I could come back from it, and I'd come back from lung surgery. So that's a tougher surgery to come from.
Yeah.
So, but it was, it really never did bother me. I never looked back at it. It was just something happened, and I just went on.
I think Maddie had one more question here for you, and then we're gonna talk about your podcast real quick.
Currently, right now, obviously, the product today, have you been watching it at all from WWE? And do you have any thoughts on AEW starting up and possibly kind of having a war on Wednesday nights between the two companies?
This the thing is, I did a few months ago. I watched some of the show, and I'll tell you why. A friend of mine who's helped me write my book, his name's Barry Norman. We've done film projects together, and we do some writing things together. And he had told me, he said, man, he goes, they put out, I guess an ad or whatever you want to call it, saying they're taking resumes from writers and storyline writers for WWE. So we made up a resume, and I had my lawyer hand it to them. And because we got a pretty good relationship with one of the attorneys that work with WWE. So we handed it to him to hand to, whoever would look at these resumes instead of just putting it in, online deal. So you never know if it gets through like that. So knowing we put our name in, we started watching the show to see what was going on, to have an idea of, just what the storylines were and who's who and who's really getting over, who's not getting over. And I'm sure they hear this 1,000 times a day. I was really shocked at the product. I'd heard a lot of things like, they were trying to get this one kid, a guy over Roman Reigns, and I heard so many bad things about the guy. But my point of view of him was that, to me, he looked like one of the better talents. He worked really hard. He had, all the parts looked good. He had a good interview. He had a good match. I didn't see anything bad about it. I didn't see anything that I could knock the guy for than the guys they were pushing. And I'm not trying to be mean because I don't know any of these people, like Kevin Owens. Hold on one second, guys.
Sure. Yep.
Hey, I'm doing this podcast. Let me call you right back. I'm sorry. That's my wife.
That's okay.
So anyway, I was watching it, and I'm thinking, and then so I have watched it, and then I saw, and I sort of make fun of this guy, Yakamura. I've heard so much about him, and I saw his intro, which I think was one of the greatest intros I ever saw, with the violins and everything like that. And then when they started making, they said they were making, budget cuts, and they took away some of the, they took away the pyro and everything. If you notice that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that to me too, you can't take away that when you give it to people. That's why they're suffering so bad in the ratings. And they knew that from when they did it in the first place. When they did it on TV, and then they looked at the house show, people wanted their money back. They knew they weren't going to ever get away from that and not pay a price for that. So then Yakamura becomes even more boring. He's just a skinny little Chinese kid that slobbers through a mouthpiece.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, this can't really be happening, So we did. To answer the question, I did want some of it just in case they were to call me and, say, hey, we're interested in you guys. Because Barry's got a hell of a background. And I think I've got a pretty good background. You mentioned the whole heat. I've only had interest in a few people, bringing people in the business, but everybody I brought in the business that had anything to do with them, they did really well.
Sid, where can we find you on social media?
Well, it's in the Vicious Circle. And you just pull it up on Google and it'll go right to it.
Okay. Awesome. Anything on Twitter, anything like that you want to promote?
Well, this is the thing is, I've talked to a guy about doing the Instagram and doing the Twitter account, but it's, it's something very thing we don't really need to do. If we think it's important, we get down to, we might start fooling with that some. But what I've learned about that so far, it's a really a weird deal. You gotta, and I've tried to already to get a few people that are doing the fake Twitter. You have to send in your passport, and I've got a few people. A couple of times got them stopped. As soon as you stop one person, somebody else starts it up. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what the benefits. I don't see. One of the reasons I would want to do Twitter, guys, be honest with you, but just be just the fact that I love predicting sports, and I would love to contact ESPN and give my thoughts on things, because you asked that Eric on Sycho Sid Promotions. I called the Chicago Cubs to win the World Series the year before they won the World Series.
Are you a Cubs fan?
No.
Oh, I'm a Cardinals fan. Oh,
I'm a Cardinals fan.
Oh, perfect.
I'm a Cardinals fan.
I just wrote a show, though. Sunday mornings with Sid. It's fantasy football advice.
Well, during the playoffs, the year before they won the World Series, I said then they'd win the World Series the next year. Because they had all the pieces.
I agree with you, by the way. I said the same thing. Then, it hurt me to say it.
I did say the next year they wouldn't win, and they won't. This is the thing is, I said they wouldn't win this year. You're not going to win another World Series. They had all the hitting. They had Chapman as the closer. But you're not going to win a World Series when your starting pitchers cannot hold a guy on first base.
Hey, listen, Sid, what we have solace in as far as Cardinals fans, we're finally back in the playoffs. And we were the team that drove the nail in the coffin on Joe Madden's term there. So we finally got back, Sid, right?
I know, man. I like Atlanta. I like St. Louis is my favorite team of all time.
Me too. I'm an Ozzie Smith running Redbirds guy.
There you go.
Who's your football team?
Well, my college team, I don't really follow the NFL because they just don't play hard anymore. It's just gotten too weird. Pro football, it's just all this stuff that they don't play for a year, and they don't play. They'll lose 8 games knowing they can make the playoffs. It's like baseball; you have to try to win every game.
Yeah.
College football and college basketball is the same. They're trying every minute, every game. So it's just I watched pro football for the first time this year a little bit, and it's so boring. I'll say this: I'm sort of an old Dallas fan, and this year will make me be a little bit of a Dallas fan this year, just because they're doing better. But my as far as football, college football, guys, is the greatest sport of all time.
Yeah.
College basketball is maybe one of the most exciting things in the world, because the league changes 45 times, and it can have 4 or 5 changes in just 6 seconds in the last 6 seconds. And there's really a lot of excitement in college basketball, but college football is maybe one of the greatest sports, and it's pretty cool this year. This is the 150th year of college football, and they're really promoting the crap out of it. But they've got this thing on ESPN, and it shows how dangerous it was back in the day, and it's really cool.
Well, Sid, I have one final question from me. How far have you hit a softball?
Man, I don't know. I know at least 450 feet.
You know what? I don't even doubt it either.
Nice. My man.
Well, I know in several times we played on baseball fields where the center field was 4 or 5.
Right.
And I hit it over the light poles at center field, so that was probably 450 feet.
Do you still get out there and play?
No, I don't, man. After I broke my leg, I never played again after that.
But I know you're a big softball and music guy, right?
Right. Well, this is the thing is, guys, I want everybody to check on the Vicious Circle.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
We're doing that. We're just getting started. I think we're doing some of the right things. I noticed some of the fans want us to go a little longer. I don't want to bore people. I want to try to make things exciting.
Yes.
One of the things we're trying to do, too, we're trying to keep it real to where we're not even going to edit our show. We're going to try to keep it that original. I want to try to tell the truth as much as I can. If I don't know the truth, I'm going to tell you I don't know the truth. And that's the way we're going to try to do. We're going to try to do something different out there. I don't want to just tell stories to be telling stories. I want crossover audiences. We're going to talk about music and things like that, which is a passion of mine, which I'm fixed. I got to go because Kim Burns got a thing right now on country music, and I don't want to miss this part of it tonight.
Perfect. Absolutely.
But that's what we're doing, guys. And it started September 1st. And again, pull it up in a vicious circle, and it'll tell you where in time it airs. And we're working on right now with possibility of going live with it and also video. So we're looking at the next stages of it because that's how much interested I've gotten into it.
Well, our audience is all over it. Everyone is saying that they're going to check it out. So awesome job, Sid.
Yeah, Sid, thank you so much for your time today.
And guys, I appreciate it. And I'd love to come on again sometimes when I got more time.
We would love to have you back. Hey, if you want to come on and talk sports, anything you want to talk about, Sid, we'd love to have you back. Thank you
guys,
again.
I appreciate you having me, and we'll do this again one day.
Definitely.
Right,
Thank you, Sid. Have a great night.
You too, guys.
All right. Bye-bye. That was a great interview, guys.
That was.
Skinny Chinese
Can I
slobbering through a mouthpiece.
Can I tell you guys, listen.
That's probably one of the best quotes in the history
can I just say
of pro wrestling.
Can I just say to the fam out there, we're going to take like a 5-minute break. I know we're kind of short on time now anyway because of my flub for the time.
We hope you enjoyed that, though, because that was a lot of fun for us.
Yeah, listen, I'm going to come back on the other side, and we're going to talk a little bit. We're going to review some of the stuff that Sid talked about for a couple minutes up to 9:30. But, guys, I'm telling you, I already listened to 2 episodes of Vicious Circle. It is very good. And for a lot of people with podcasts, sometimes they can be long-winded. It is only each episode's about 28 to 32 minutes. And he is very candid on there. He's very honest. As you can tell, he's a great interview, great storyteller. You guys need to go on and check out Vicious Circle. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. We'll reflect on some of the things that Sid talked about.
All right, then. So this first half of Lazy Booking brought to you by Gibson Mayer, LLC. Give them a call at 215-369-3300. Tax season will be back before you know it. Be ready, be prepared, and call Gibson Mayer.
All right, see you in a minute. The following announcement has been paid for by A2D Radio.com.
You want real talk? You want hot takes? You want to know what's really going on in the world of professional wrestling? Do you want the best in the business? You need to check out Lazy Booking, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Thursday nights, only on A2D Radio.com. Because everybody knows when you're A2D, your A2D, full life. No notes.
Everybody, I'm Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, and everybody's got a price for Lazy Booking. Hey, this is your Olympic hero, Kurt Angle, and you're listening to Lazy Booking. Go, it's true. It's damn true. Ho! Hey, folks, I'm WWE Hall of Famer Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and if you want to know what's going on in wrestling, check out Lazy Bookings. Ho!
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Lazy Booking right here on A2DRadio.com. Brought to you by Gibson Mayer, LLC, your certified public accountants, located at 301 Oxford Valley Road, New Orleans, PA. Give them a call, 215-369-3300. Tax season will be back before you know it. Be ready, be prepared, and call Gibson Mayer.
And also, we want to give a shout out to our conversation piece sponsor, Dr. Paul Vidal, Specialized Physical Therapy. You can find them on the web, specializedphysicaltherapy.com. You can find their locations in Cherry Hill, Princeton, and Burlington, New Jersey. No appointment needed. Make the doctor yours.
Sid could have used him at one point.
Oh, don't go there. Guys, appreciate you guys coming back with us. I hope that you enjoyed that. We had a wonderful first half with Sycho Sid Vicious.
What do we have him for, 45 minutes almost?
It's probably
Maybe
maybe even a
longer?
little more than that.
Almost an hour, I think.
Yeah,
actually.
that was, I mean, listen, it was a wonderful interview. And again, Sid's new project. And he told us, I didn't know, he's working on a book as well. So keep your eyes out for that. As you can tell, Sid is a wonderful storyteller. He's now doing a podcast, Vicious Circle. You can look it up. You can find it. You can find it on Electronic Media Collective Podcast Network. We'll put that out there. But again, the shows are great. The podcasts are great. There's 4 episodes that dropped. I've gotten through 2 of them. And I mean, guys, that was a great interview.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was awesome. Like it was really cool just to hear him talk about his early days being Lord Humongous, and then doing a little insight on him getting the championship in '96.
Yeah,
interesting how he glossed right over his NWA time though. It kind of was like he went from being Lord Humongous to when I debuted in WWF, and I'm like, damn it, he doesn't want to talk about being a horseman.
Well, we jumped
Son
around
of a
too.
bitch.
I knew we only had so much time, and we knew that. So
it was interesting though, because think about how many questions the 3 of us came up with, and we asked like 7 questions.
If
and
that,
he just carried the whole rest of the conversation.
Yeah, I mean
that was awesome.
There's a lot. There's really a lot to this guy, and I do believe that there's a lot that a lot of the stories that you hear about him are misunderstood. And we
half
know that.
truth,
half truths,
Yeah.
and from what I've gathered from listening to his podcast, there's stuff that if it's true, he's not shying away from it either.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing with anybody who's been in the business. You're going to make some friends, you're going to make some enemies, and unfortunately, some people who want to slander you, sometimes they're the more boisterous than the people who would defend you. And then people believe one side of the story, and you don't realize there's the other side of it.
Yeah, and we have a national audience, but for us, particularly for the bulk of our audience that's in the Northeast, to hear his appreciation for the Northeast wrestling
throwing
fan.
some love to the Northeast wrestling fans.
He said it's his favorite place to work. He thinks that they're the best fans. He obviously he loved working in Madison Square Garden, and how could
who doesn't?
you not?
Yeah.
But he's right. Maybe I didn't choose my words right by saying he's one of. He really was the first guy that I can think of outside of Ric Flair, maybe second guy, who as a heel was truly cheered against big baby faces like the Hogans. Really, honestly, you never really saw him, Flair and Hogan, until '94. Yeah. So he's not lying when he says in '92 he was cheered over.
No, he was the guy.
Hogan.
And I think he misunderstood my point when I said that he and Vader were underrated.
Yeah.
I didn't mean underrated as in their reputation. I meant like as workers. You'd think you put 2 big guys like that in the ring and you're going to have a really sort of slow plotting match. But I think as workers, they were both underrated. But I loved how he took that sort of cue and was talking about how they did the top wrist lock and the test of strength and just turned it into a really entertaining match.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great too because and to that point, it's like I would say even the underrated side, more underutilized, I think is the better way to say it, where because Vader, guy who could have easily have been given the WWF title at any time, but politics kind of kept him away from that for the most part. For Sid, it was like there was no denying. It's just like you had to put the belt on him. You just had to, and he was clearing that up really quickly. It's just like you had to put the title on him.
Bill Middlebrook said he was humble when taking credit for stuff.
Yes.
I don't know how humble he was.
No.
He wasn't cocky. I don't know how humble he was.
Well, I mean, listen,
he called it like it was though.
To him,
he wasn't bullshitting anybody.
No,
and I don't think he should be. And to hear him talk about, did we know that he went for a job at Creative?
That was awesome.
No, did not know that.
I mean,
he submitted a resume to Creative.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
I mean, he tried. He worked on trying to get a job at Creative. It was just a really insightful interview. I'm telling you. And if you missed any of it, guys, you can go back. You can find it on Instagram, Periscope. You can find it on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and now on iHeartRadio. You can get the podcast version because A2D is on iHeartRadio, guys.
So, Maddie, do you think he intentionally ignored the part of your question about AEW?
I mean,
if I'm being honest, I just don't think he's smartened up to it now because he said he only watched it for a few months.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, though, with AEW, even if he was going to answer it, it's hard to really even judge AEW at this time because they haven't
they
hit
don't have
TV
yet, right.
So we don't know. We don't know what they're going to be when they're up against NXT at this point.
Yeah, I mean, no matter who you are, if you're not watching the product regularly and you're not following it, I don't see you going out of your way to spend $70 on something. Yeah. And he admittedly said he's not a guy who surfs the internet and reads dirt sheets and whatnot, and I enjoyed his explanation about that in the beginning.
John C. Danzo said he pulled 0 punches, awesome stuff. And Bill Middlebrook said, loved when he said, I wanted to do something that I could do to any man, #Powerbomb.
Loved it, yes. And he did. He did it to big guys, small guys, and everybody in between. And you know, one of the other things that I found very, very fascinating was he loved Roman Reigns. Well, not loved him, but he looked at it, he took it from a perspective of not being smartened up to everything. He said, I watch, and there's a guy named Roman Reigns. And I thought that
I'm not going to lie to you. I thought that was going to go downhill in a hurry. And he actually went uphill instead of downhill.
Yeah, he said, you know, I didn't know much or anything about him. And then he said, what I saw, he has a great look. He thought he had a great promo. And he thought his matches were great.
Which is what we've said about him pretty much for the last
Well, we've only gotten
2 years.
recently come around on
Well,
him.
to be fair, and the major reason why is because, again, it's the it guy factor that, you know, everybody jumps on and starts to boo, you know.
Right.
It's kind of the trendy thing to do.
The trendy thing to do.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, but, I mean, awesome interview, the Harlem Heat story. There's a lot of good stuff.
That was great.
A lot of really good stuff from Sid, guys. Please go back and check it out.
I thought the story about his debut with the Bushwhacker,
hilarious.
And yes, the guy's got scars all over his forehead.
Oh, that was hilarious.
And he just wants me to put him back in his seat.
And he said, well, as soon as I stood up, he sat back down.
Maybe he's scared of me.
That was a great story.
Oh man, so yeah, but that was a fun interview. You know, hopefully he does come back. You know, and hopefully we can get him back on here another time. That was really fun.
Bottom.
Do you think Sid was active today? How would a match between him and Roman go, in your opinion?
So that's from John. John C. Danzo.
I think that they would have a great match. To be honest with you,
I think it would probably be, you know, like a more of an old school style match where it'd be like Roman's actually being like physically, you know, imposed on because Sid's taller than him, and I would say their strength is probably around the same.
I think it'd be very similar to from what you're saying there. I think it's very similar to like a Roman Drew McIntyre match.
Yes,
sure.
Yes, we would go with that. Yeah.
And you know the other thing too that I want to kind of point out when you talked about him talking about the work with Vader and how they didn't have to do, you know, all the fluff and everything, and they could make traditional wrestling work.
Yeah, and that's why I would say if he was to have a match today with Roman Reigns, it'd be more old school style where it wouldn't be like high spot. Roman gets to his ooh-ah and then does the spear and the Superman punch and you go home. You know?
And well, it's interesting that we talked about Bobby Roode at the top of the show because he's one of those few guys, and you throw in teams like the Revival who do a lot of that traditional wrestling style. And I'm fully on board with Sid that not everything has to be big spots over the top. There is a definitive spot and what I believe a gap missing for the traditional wrestling style. Doesn't have to be every match, but similar to that you have cruiserweights and you have hardcore and you have this and that. Why can't you have one or two spots on the card, kind of what ECW used to do with their hardcore style, but then they would bring in the Benoits and Guerreros and Malenkos to have a spot on the card to have two guys who can wrestle an all-out traditional wrestling style.
Well, it's interesting you said that because the old ECW formula, at least, you know, going back to right before they went on pay-per-view, was their opening match was always like a high-flying, not necessarily a hardcore style, but it was always like high-flying, fast-paced, whatever, to get the energy level up. There was always some sort of lucha match on the card. Then you had the quote unquote the technical guys, the strong style guys, but then you had plenty of like that hardcore sprinkled in there, and I mean, you're spot on.
Yeah, and you could see that happen in places like Japan. ECW and FMW had that in common, where you'd have your wrestling matches mixed in with your death matches and your hardcore matches, and that was just Americanized, and it blended really well especially with an audience in Philadelphia that would appreciate all of that.
I'm not gonna lie to you guys, so I almost lost my shit when he started ragging on Hogan's comeback. he's like, I'm just, he's like, you get the heat on me, and then I'm gonna no-sell a punch, and then I'm gonna block it and punch you back, and then block it and then punch you back, and then I'll start walking around the ring, and he did the same shit every night, and I'm like, yes!
It was perfect.
It's perfect.
I wonder what he thought. We should have asked this question, what he thought of when he went to WCW and he had to work with Hogan again in 2000.
But
God.
he
probably saw dollar signs.
Probably.
I have to say that I agree with him. As a fan, to hear him say for him the highlight of his career was that time in WWE, that moment at Survivor Series where the fans kind of put him in that spot, and that run that he had after that leading up to WrestleMania 13 as kind of where he looked like it sounded like he said that was his highlight of his career. Because when I think of Sid, I think of that Survivor Series match. I think of that pop, that hot crowd. Never seen Shawn Michaels in the face roll when he had made that turn after WrestleMania 12 be absolutely booed out of a building. It was a very monumental moment, and again, ahead of its time compared to what we see a lot of now. And, he did mention guys like Kevin Owens and these other guys who are kind of those guys, specifically KevinOwens.
So I know we're super short on time, but I want to go back to the poll question real quick before we get out of here.
I did want to ask him if he's seen anything about The Fiend.
Probably not. Probably not, but it would have been awesome.
Oh, I wish he did, though, because I would have loved to hear what
So
his
my answer to the
on.
poll question is I'm going to say disagree.
Okay.
Unless they want to keep the belt on him for a year or more, I prefer him as the hunter, not the hunted.
I think it's tough to do the hunter with a heel character, though. And he, for all intents and purposes, is a heel character.
No, I agreed.
I think if you're putting him in the main event picture right now with how hot this program is and the creative that it's doing and the talk that you're getting, and I don't think it's a hot shot by doing it. I think it's well planned. You have to put the title on him. You cannot. You have recreated Bray Wyatt, a guy who nobody thought could be recreated with the loss after loss in big matches. Almost every pay-per-view. His pay-per-view record might be one of the worst, if not the worst, in professional wrestling history, other than maybe Flair in the 90s. But you cannot do the same thing that you just did to this guy for 3 or 4 or 5 years where you ran this guy into the ground. You can't do it. It's a setback on the character.
I don't necessarily want Seth to beat him either.
I don't need a dusty finish for this guy. You just came out of this hot, for all intents and purposes, a squash match would fit. I'm not saying he needs to squash Seth, but you need to build off of that. You can't have him have one match that's a squash and then come back and either take a loss or you have a schmaz.
I hate that we're so short on time.
Yeah.
I want to debate you on this for like 45 minutes.
Well,
because you're wrong.
We'll have to figure it out another time. But, guys, again, go back, check out the archives, listen to this interview if you miss any of it. I'm telling you, this was great.
Download it from iHeartRadio.
On iHeartRadio, YouTube, Instagram, Periscope, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere. Thank you again to Sid. Check out Vicious Circle. I'm telling you, you're not going to regret it. Maddie, why don't you give us our sponsor read here?
All right, then. So, Lazy Booking was brought to you by Gibson Mayor LLC, your certified public accounts located at 301 Oxford Valley Road in Yardley, PA. Give them a call, 215-369-3300. Tax season will be here before you know it, so be ready, be prepared, and call Gibson Mayor.
And again, guys, also shout out to Specialized Physical Therapy, Dr. Paul Vidal, our doctor. Make them yours, specializedphysicaltherapy.com. Again, check out Vicious Circle. Check out Hockey Happy Hour, the real Triple H with special guests.
Great job by the bro tonight, too.
Yes.
Brodo, great job, man. You killed it. Seriously. And I apologize for the flub. But we made up for it.
The flub.
That was a definite flub. We got special guests on Hockey Happy Hour, right?
Yes,
Mr.
we
Rob
do.
Povia.
Yeah.
Oh, he's special.
Oh, come on. You founded Hockey Happy Hour with me. You're special.
Guys, thank you again for joining us. Check out Hockey Happy Hour. Check out all of A2D. For me, Thursday, first half live reaction show of Birds of a Feather, swapping the nights.
I'll see you guys tomorrow night
You'll
on
see-
Tom and Mike AM in the PM.
That's right. So for us
With
here,
the side
guys,
piece.
we'll talk to you soon. Have a great week.